All right, so this next portion is covering how to go ahead and graph a function given some points and some different limits. So to start out today, so here's our given information that we have, and then we just want to go ahead and plot f of x to the best of our ability. So whenever you're given a problem like this, I would say it's always the best place to go ahead and start with our given points, which are down here at the bottom. We're given f of 2 equal to 0. So we know that somewhere in our function, we're going to have the point 2, 0. Oh. And then our next point that we have is f of 0 is equal to negative 3. So we can go to that point 0, negative 3, and we know that that's going to exist somewhere in our function as well. So right off the bat, we already have 2 pieces done. So our next part that we can go ahead and do is I think it's always good to kind of start with the pieces that refer to those points that we just plotted. So we did plot x equal to 2. So we actually do have some limits at x as x is approaching 2. So I think we should go ahead and start there. So if we start with the top one, that is showing the limit as x approaches 2 from the negative side. So we're looking at what's happening to the function as x is approaching from this way. And as f of x is approaching this way, it's telling us that our limit is going to be at 0, which is actually the point that we went ahead and plotted. So we know that whatever's happening here, f of x is coming up to that point. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a random line here just to show that we're approaching there. So we have that down. And now our next little piece as x is approaching 2 is showing what x is doing as approaching from the positive side. So this is what our function is doing as we come this way. And it's telling us that that function is approaching 1. One thing to make sure you remember here is that even though our function is approaching 1 at x equals 2, we do have a value at 2 as 0. So we do want to go ahead and kind of plot that point, but we want to keep that open as a whole because our actual value at that point is equal to 0, not 1. But we do know that as f of x is approaching 1, or I'm sorry, as x is approaching 2, we do know that our f of x is getting closer to that 1. So now we have that down. Okay, and then the next piece that we'll go ahead and look at, we can go ahead and take a look and see what's happening as f of x is, as x is approaching 1. So what we're given here is that x approaches 1, f of x is going towards negative infinity. So our function at 1 is going towards negative infinity. So we'll go ahead and put in a line here. So what that means whenever you have that, our limit as x is approaching a certain number, whenever that's equal to infinity or negative infinity, that implies that we have a vertical asymptote. And if we were to go ahead and show that, I'm going to go ahead and redo this little line now that we have our new information. And on this side, it's going to be approaching negative infinity. And since this isn't asking or telling us that we're going from either like one specific side, it's not saying as x approaches 1 from the negative side or the positive, it's actually saying that it's approaching negative infinity from either side of 1, then that means this side is also approaching there. And we do have a point here, our 0, negative 3, so I'm going to just go ahead and connect that together real quick. There's that. And we finished this little piece here. And then that leaves our last piece as the limit as x approaches negative infinity of f of x is negative 2. So as our function is going towards negative infinity, or I'm sorry, as our x goes towards negative infinity, our function is going to get closer and closer to this line here of y equals negative 2. So there, whenever you have the limit as x is going towards negative infinity or infinity, that's saying that we're looking at our end behavior, that the end part of your graph is getting towards a point, which is the same as a horizontal asymptote. All right, awesome. So yeah, we can go ahead and there was nothing else that we really explicitly needed to write for our function going towards positive infinity. We weren't given any more details, so we can just kind of make this line up however we want. If you wanted to, you could make this a parabola. You could have had it going down, just so long as it's approaching that 1 value, which is what we said, because here, as x is getting closer to 2 from the positive, we're getting closer to 1. So big things to remember is the difference between your limit as x approaches infinity or negative infinity. That is telling you where your horizontal asymptotes are. That's telling you about the end behavior of your function, versus the limit at a number being equal to infinity or negative infinity is telling you when you have a vertical asymptote. And understanding the differences between where that infinity symbol is, whether it's as x approaches infinity or the result of your limit, what that means, that's really important. That's going to be really helpful for you when trying to solve these types of problems.